So, as part of my work at Pearl Lemon, one of the things that happens once a week, once every 2 weeks, is that I get asked for pay rises from the team. Right now, we're maybe between 70 and 80 people, and salary requests come in consistently. And I want to, on the basis of the hundreds of salary requests, and that's not a small number, think about it, hundreds, several hundred salary requests, it could be more, that I've got over the last 7 years of running Pearl Lemon. I want to distill some of the patterns I've seen in those who successfully get pay rises, or those who get pay rises and get pay rises without me even second guessing it, versus those who fundamentally don't get the pay rises, or they get it but begrudgingly get it. So I want to talk about some of the patterns, and this is inspired by me getting asked for a pay rise today, and precisely what I think was absolutely not the right way, which I explained to said person. Let's call said person George. So George, this is inspired by you, and I'm going to begin by talking about the things that you shouldn't do when it comes to asking for a pay rise, in my modest opinion. And I want to walk through some of the practical strategies that you could employ. So let's go through them one at a time. So the first thing is the salary rises come as a consequence of value that's already been delivered above and beyond outside your job description, value that is delivered ahead of time when it comes to your job description. So, for example, if you're in paid media and you're going to be running a client campaign, or you're running your internal company campaign, then it might be expected that you, for example, hit a certain level of ROAS, return on ad spend, within 3 months. So you might hit a return on ad spend within the allotted time, but you also might be launching several other campaigns at the same time, which weren't really ever part of the job description. So in that way, you go and ask for a pay rise. The other version of that is that you might get the expected return on ad spend, but rather doing it within 3 months, you might do it within 1 month. And then you're able, for the following 2 months, demonstrate or deliver even greater value. So in that respect, you might feel that you deserve a pay rise. Version number 3 of that is you will be expected to return a positive ROAS over 3 months, and you might get a much greater than expected return on ad spend, and you might get it quicker and better than was anticipated. And that would be another space in which to potentially ask for a pay rise. So in certain cases, there's ultimately expected points at which you might feel, and you, of course, might be worthy of a pay rise. Now, first of all, if you're in a role, the ROI, or where the ROI is very black and white, then amazing, because you can easily demonstrate that. Now, the deep irony of it is that depending upon who it is you're asking for a pay rise, make sure when you go to that person and ask them for a pay rise, even when success is self-evident, and this is exactly what happened today, it's only as self-evident as the evidence you're able to provide to the person you're asking for the pay rise for. Whether you verbally articulate it, whether you fundamentally write it down. I have people that will come and say, Deepak, I've been here 6 months, or I've been here and I've been working really hard. I've been improving. I think I deserve a pay rise. So whilst all those things might be true, I've been here X months, I have improved, I've been delivering, you need to demonstrate the proof of what you're referring to. It's always going to help you. And not enough people do that. What happens is that there's simply a passing of time. You feel that your responsibilities have increased. And at best, you articulate the extra work that you're doing and why that means. And this is typically what happens. You articulate the extra work that you're doing, and you say that, well, this is clearly worthy of a pay rise, which is fine in and of itself. But what you want to do when you're asking for pay rise is you want the request to be unequivocally met with a yes. And you therefore don't want any shade of ambiguity when it comes to the request. So that's why I think a lot of people get it wrong when you ask for a pay rise impulsively. It doesn't seem impulsive, but the intuition, because the intuition is there, the evidence in your own mind is there, the evidence is verbally there to see, but there's almost always more than one factor or one person that comes into the actual approval of the salary request itself. So a company like Pearl Lemon, we're a small business. We do less than a couple of $1 million a year. And that means that fundamentally, when it comes to pay rises, we have HR and we have myself. And then therefore, there's already two people in that equation, but then I need to track it against the growth of the company. I need to track it against their performance compared to their peers, and I need to track it against the expected improvements that I'd see in any given role as people achieve increased competency over time. Because the standard and expectation at a company such as Pearl Lemon is that you steadily and slowly improve at your role on a continuous basis. And definitely, therefore, it merits a pay rise. But then there's questions over when is that pay rise given? How much improvement is fundamentally expected? And as much as a company can codify it, it's up to you, as the person asking for the pay rise, to make an unequivocal demonstration of your worthiness of said pay rise and correlate it. And again, this is where the exchange value comes in. Correlate it with a reflection of the value that's been generated or the value that you project you will generate based upon a series of evidential or referential points that show proof of progress and or a plan for improvement for the future. And not enough people do that. Not enough people demonstrate that. And for those reasons, it means that it clouds the ability to get the pay rise. So, George, and to all of the Georges out there, when asking for a pay rise, make your request undeniable. Demonstrate an Excel spreadsheet, a Word document, all of the actual things that you have done that were not an expected part of your role, or all of the things that you have done that showed you have more than executed what is within your role. And these are two areas. And if you want to go even to a third bucket, bring in collective evidence from what the team have been saying about your performance, because then it's much easier to get the salary approval met. I mean, if you're going for even loftier goals, then what you can really begin to think about is connecting it. And this is another key area that I think when asking for a salary request that you don't necessarily appreciate. When you're in a small business, a business that's less than, let's say, $10 million a year, the reality is that any given individual with enough thinking can make a visible impact upon the company's bottom line. So in asking for your pay rise, it serves you if you want to get exponential increases in income to align the request with the value you're going to drive to the company's bottom line or the company's top line revenue, however you want to articulate it. So why don't you just go ahead and find out exactly what are the company's commercial goals, correlate that with the work that you're doing, and draw a line between your growing ultimately value to the company as demonstrated by evidence and how that's going to increase the company's top line revenue. Barely anyone does that. People go for the lowest rung on the ladder, which is the classic case, which you'd all expect. I've been here and I've been improving. I'd like a pay rise. And sometimes it's just a case of, I've been here, I'd like a pay rise. I've been working hard, I'd like a pay rise. And whilst pay rises can be given in those circumstances, you set yourself up or you introduce a more than significant percentage that you're going to get a knockback or a no from it. And that's something that if you're a business owner who's watching this, I encourage you to introduce your team to bring to the conversations. And if you're watching this and you're asking for the pay rise, why don't you keep a log, an audit file, a log audit file of your continued growth of the company and all of the ways you are fulfilling to the nth degree your job description and all of the things that you're doing outside of your job description, and where your job description is not set in stone and it's fluid, That's where, and this often happens because if it's expected part of the company that you're going to be helping out in several areas, that's where you need to look at fundamentally the work that you're doing and it's your the unexpected contribution to the company returns. Because then, and again, we're dealing in trying to demonstrate as much certainty as possible when it comes for you to getting the request that you want. You need to make the request seemingly undeniable. And sidebar, this is why learning how to sell becomes important. And when you learn how to sell, not only do you sell yourself above and beyond perhaps your current ability, you actually get better at your ability in the role because your persuasion skills and your understanding of commercial value increases. And then typically, correspondingly, you can drive more value because you understand how to articulate the value that needs to be driven. And the two and two or the one and one make the two, because if you talk like you wish to act, and then often you'll end up acting like the way that you talk. So seeing and saying can be believing. So that's why there's actually benefit in understanding, well, what are the commercial goals of the company? What is my job description? Am I going above and beyond my job description? How do I make my salary request undeniable? Am I doing things that undeniably demonstrate that I should get the pay rise that I'm asking for? People don't go to this level. They go to the, I've been here a while, I'd love to discuss a pay rise. Number one, they go to the, you can see I'm improving, I'm definitely improving, a couple of clients are happy. Number two, some people even go as far as to say, I've been here a while, I'm improving, people around me are happy, and then clients are happy, and that's number three. Very, very few people do all three, but then articulate it in a document with metrics and show a vision of what's possible if I get the pay rise that I'm asking and how I'm going to propel the company's growth. A demonstration or a presentation of what's happened since I've come in and performed outside of my job description, and the continual and or infinite value that I've already delivered to the company and the value add that you've delivered to the company. And also, if you want the cherry, and this is the side note, the cherry on top, also the value that you provide, that you bring to the team, that even if you were to be replaced could not be given. So what's your unique value? And that's the also piece of difference if you're in a role that doesn't require an extremely specialized set of skills to start that role. And of course, that concept is arguably debatable. But if you're in a high ticket sales position, then there are an abundance of high ticket sales people, and the gateway to becoming one doesn't require a specific certificate or a qualification. Unless you're in vocations or industries that require a certain degree at Stanford or Oxford, or require a certain type of degree, mathematics, or require a certain type of experience. So with all of that in mind, the more ultimately flags you can plant when it comes to presenting your paper, if you will, your manifesto, it's a word I'm looking for, your manifesto to your employer, you're just going to do that much better, okay? So you've got the number one, show that you've excelled in your job role. Number two, show the value that you've added in a financial cost or time saving or value adding way since you've been at the company. Number three, demonstrate the value outside of your job role that you provided to the actual company. Number four, demonstrate the joy and value that you provide in helping others in the company. Number five, demonstrate the projections or what's possible in the future as you continue on the journey that you're on. Number six, keep a written record of your journey in terms of milestones and key performance indicators at the company that can lend towards your request for a salary increase. And a further bonus is to mathematically model your growing value to the company, mathematically model your potential returns. So in terms of growing value, and this is where if you're applying for or asking for a job rise, it pays to think a little bit like a consultant. Okay, so these are the tactics. So when I talk about thinking of a consultant, it's I would say for other members of the team because of unique things that you've given that it would be very difficult for someone else to come in and add. And minor things can have a major impact. And the problem that I sometimes have, and I'm going to talk about why it's worthy to go to this nth degree, because the problem that I have is that you, to some degree, or my team, George, to some degree, you expect me to remember 100% of our correspondence. But George, you're talking to, for example, one managing director, but I'm talking to 75 employees, give or take some who I don't speak to as much, or if at all. So let's even say if it was 20, that's 20 different people, 20 different conversations, 20 different salary requests. And absolutely, I'm going to do my best to remember, but the nuances, a conversation that we had 6 months ago, 8 months ago, 2 weeks ago, amongst the hundreds of different things that happen every day, it's better that you document and better that you remind and better that you demonstrate the value that you're bringing. It's just the safest way to do it. Because then, and this is what happens, in absence of doing that, what you bank upon is catching your sales director, your manager, your managing director, the founder on a good day, when the company's doing fantastic, when the quarterly earnings are amazing, when they've seen something that you've independently done that's well. And people often use that as a strategy, right? You'll use a pattern of good performance to ask for a pay rise when actually that pattern in context of your entire performance is more a blip rather than a theme. And people try and flip the blip into the theme. And then that's where the inconsistency lies. And that's sometimes what I see within the company, that people might have, for example, at times, I say people, but it has happened, and sometimes it still does happen. And they'll see, or they'll cover up, not intentionally, 7 weeks of expected, sometimes neutral to expected to poor, if that's the pendulum that you swing upon, and then have 1 week of good performance and then come and immediately ask for a pay rise, as if the 1 week of good performance should wipe out the 7 weeks of neutral to poor performance. So the math doesn't work. The math doesn't add up. But what would typically happen is that emotions carry you and you ask for a pay rise in those instances. And sometimes you will maybe get that pay rise, but the exchange value isn't really there, because then you might dip and go back down into sub-optimal performance. And then that becomes that problem. And I have that problem sometimes where people do catch me at a good moment. They'll ask for a salary request. It's approved. And then a week or two goes by and I think, you know what? I don't think that that person was deserving, which is why, and we talk about this when it comes to sales, fear the fast yes. You want a comprehensive yes from the person that you're seeking the yes from, so that the person you're seeking getting the yes from doesn't experience any sense of buyer's remorse. So that's why mapping out everything and the value, having it documented, is always a safer way to ultimately make that request, because then if there's any buyer's remorse, or then if words are forgotten, you have something to go back to and say, well, these are all of the things I did. Don't you remember? This is why, again, want a salary increase that was sooner than expected. So make sure when you're asking for a salary request, and make sure if you're the managing director who's managing the people that ask for the salary request, that you bring it's called, I think Ramit Sethi, when he talked about hiring, used to call it the briefcase method. Briefcase method. Bring your portfolio, bring your evidence, bring your demonstrations, and present. Now, the form of the presentation, sometimes in some cases, again, and much of it depends how close the person that you're working with is to your results and to your evidence. Some evidence can, again, be unequivocally so clear. So if you're in a sales role where your ultimate job is to bring in money, then it's likely that the person you're going to refer to will say, okay, cool. How much did you bring in last month? 10,000. How much did you bring in this month? 14,000. How much you projected to bring in next month? 19,000. What was the expectation? 10, 12, 14. What is the delivery right now? 10, 14, 19 expected. So on that basis, you're achieving faster than the rate of expected progress, and therefore the pay rise is warranted. And sometimes the people close to you will absolutely know that, but oftentimes they can surprise you in that you're not always privy, because that's where you're asking up, right? So when you're asking up, it means that inherently, to some degree, the person that you're asking up has different responsibilities to yourself if you're here. So the people that are above me, we're at 1 or 2 million, between 1 and 2, and across the businesses that I own and operate. But and which is tiny. It is tiny, and I get that. But and again, tiny is relative. But the whole point of this is that I say knowingly that it's tiny because there's people that are above me at the higher level that are making 5 to 10 million a year, which is 4 or 5x what we do, 4 or 5 to 10x what we do. And therefore, in order for me to get access, for example, to their time, if I wanted to, then there's a differential demonstration that I need to present, because it's not just the case that results speak for themselves, because they are subject to different responsibilities, different ultimately decisions than I have full knowledge of, because they are where I have not yet been. And as much as I can map it out is abstract. So therefore, it's my job to make my request as explicit as possible, because I shouldn't assume, because I can't assume, because I don't know. And similarly, when you're asking for a salary request, it can't be obvious unless you know everything about that person's responsibility. And often you might think you do, but logically, depending upon the difference in position, you can't. If I'm going from a, let's say, 1.5 million to 2.2 million agency, I should have quite a close approximation of what the insights are. But as soon as you go from 1.5 to, let's say, 3, it's still double. It's still double, and double's double. It's a lot. It's a lot more. And that means there's going to be other things or other responsibilities that they have that I might not have, or that I just might not have knowledge of. Likely, it's more likely yes than no. So with that in mind, make your requests as explicit as possible, because it's only going to serve you in the end. So then when you come, and this isn't a video in depth to discuss the tactics of the ask, it's about bringing the ask to the table and documenting it to such an extent and so well that the nature of how you asks is superseded by the request in and of itself. And that way you can safeguard yourself from even fudging the way that you ask for the request, because the evidence is so clear that even if the ask isn't tactically as expert as you would like it, maybe you catch your manager or the founder, maybe you catch me on a bad day, maybe you catch me on a weekend, as happened, for example, on the day that I made this video, which is a Saturday. Maybe you catch me when I'm on the way out. Irrespective of those less than ideal circumstances, and of course we try and optimize for the best ones. You want to get onto a call, you want to trade voice notes like we do at Pearl Lemon, you want to send a video across to explain why you think you deserve a pay rise, you want to have the demonstration of effort. Maybe you just want to have a ring your decision maker, ring your manager, ring me, or something similar, but you can't factor in the exact circumstances around what's going to happen then. But what you can always account for is how well your presentation comes across. And that's entirely within your scope of control. So the better that you're able to do that, the more likely you're able to get that which you want. And if you can abide by that, get the relevant recommendations or seals of approval from the team around you, where you say, look, I'd like to get a pay. Imagine coming to me, but I have my team of directors. Imagine you coming to me and saying, Lydia agrees, Eon agrees, this person agrees, Temi agrees. Imagine coming to me and saying that. It's a very, very different beast. And of course, that makes your request somewhat harder to a degree, because you want to go straight to source. But in the end, it doesn't benefit you, because then there is some element of potentially buyer's remorse. And it may be the case, and there is a case, that there's some people within the company that have been given pay rises where there's a question in my mind as to whether the value demonstration as we would like it to be wasn't made clear enough. So that's why there's a strategy around how you ask, but the biggest ultimately key is putting together the ultimately proposal or the pitch for how you ask, and to make the pitch so strong and evidentially backed that the request is undeniable, because to say no would be silly. And of course, that means being truly competent in your role, having a clear track record of continued success, because then even when there's circumstantial problems, you increase. It's like getting a booster shot. You increase your levels of immunity or invulnerability to other problems or company problems or other pressures, because your value that you bring has been demonstrated so unequivocally that to not give you a pay rise would be nonsensical. So make sure when you ask for that pay rise, you consider these angles, that you demonstrate evidence of success, you demonstrate the accelerated success, you get references from the right people, you map out your value delivered to date for the company, you map out your increasing value and the rate at which it accelerates in your proposal, and you're much, 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 much more likely to get your proposal accepted. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Please do comment, like, and subscribe if you're enjoying these videos.